Well, that was a waste of 10 bucks Canadian and an hour and 15 minutes out of my life I ain't getting back. Yes, kids, I watched Fat Topia, so you don't have to. Well, hey kids, straight talking Fedora coming at you today, and welcome to the channel. If you are new here, we are a social commentary and story time channel focusing mainly on mental health, but not exclusively. If you're into this kind of thing, please consider subscribing and hit that little ringy dingy icon below so you can be notified every time I upload. So onward, several problems I had with the movie Fat Topia, which I will be discussing here. Number one, I had an issue with the filmmaker himself, Connor Luke Simpson. I also had an issue with him narrating the film himself. Now I'm going to get into that. The narrator, host, or animator should have been a woman. And I'm saying this not because I'm some ardent feminist. As a matter of fact, yours truly has been disillusioned with the feminist movement as of late, but that's another video for another time. So, just to say, let's clear that one bias up right now. Preferably a woman who either had trouble with her weight in the past or who currently still does. Connor Luke Simpson, the host, narrator of Fatopia, clearly cannot relate, nor is relatable regarding this subject. To be noted, he is also the director, as I mentioned. So who is he? What makes him particularly qualified? Because honestly, he's particularly unqualified, in my opinion, is that after much research, I have not found any indication of him having weight issues, nor did he have someone close to him with any weight issues. Now, I could be wrong about the latter, but I am saying I have found no evidence of it to date. I am open to being corrected, though. According to an interview, he is a millennial who aspires to make documentaries in the style of what we see on Netflix or on Amazon Prime these days. He also claims his inspiration, of all people, is Michael Moore. Pretty strange because Connor Luke Simpson strikes me as a bit right of center, but hey. Michael Moore, who needs no introduction. I kind of scoffed at this again because, honestly, I am not sure how Michael Moore himself would feel about some aspiring millennial claiming to be inspired to make a rather biased, vacuous documentary with missing facts and data on the fat acceptance. For openers, Moore himself has obviously had issues with his own weight over the years. He does not strike me as someone who would be actively fat-shaming people. Now, again, I could be wrong, but given how he usually stands up for the marginalized and the disenfranchised, fat-shaming would not fit this modus operandi. Simpson claims he chose to do a documentary on fat acceptance in particular because he was inspired specifically by the Tess Holliday scandal of 2015. Now that's a bit strange because Tess Holliday's scandal that he's talking about, the one of 2015, has far less to do with her weight and her appearance and more of the cluster effing that was the t-shirt scandal, her questionable business practices. But anyway, I'm not going to provide any overview of that particular scandal of 2015 in this video, because this video is already going to be long enough as it is, and this video is not about Tess Holliday. Now, I am not sure if Simpson himself hates her for whatever reason, either because she gets magazine cover deals, or because she's morbidly obese, or because she has questionable business practices, or even all of the above. Or not, but it begs the question of bias. You know, boys and girls, my father, who was a high school teacher, taught his students, as well as my brother and myself, that whenever we read a newspaper article or a book, always try to find the bias of the author or authors in question. And here, that is exactly what I am trying to do in this video. What is the bias of Connor Luke Simpson to do such a documentary? Another thing, well, dudes certainly face stigma, discrimination, as well as fat shaming. It is proven time and time again that overweight women are far more stigmatized and marginalized than their male counterparts. For example, in one study, and the link will be below in the description box for your own perusal so you can see for yourself, men reported facing stigma and discrimination at a BMI higher than 35, whereas women reported to be just at 27. In one survey, where 500 hiring professionals were shown a picture of an overweight woman dressed for the office at a desk working like anybody else would be or should be, only 15.6% would consider hiring the overweight woman. 1 in 5 characterized the woman in that picture as lazy. Or 21% considered her unprofessional. It is important to note, yes, including other overweight women, are just as likely to stigmatize other overweight and obese women as men are of any size. So this is not a feminist argument, once again. I simply feel that a male with no obvious background with weight issues is the wrong candidate. Connor Luke Simpson is the wrong candidate. It should be added that in the movie, Simpson had trouble finding interview subjects, and one who insisted on remaining anonymous had admitted to instructing others in her movement or group, or whatever you want to call them, to not grant him an interview. I have to wonder if these same women were approached by Simpson and his people would have been more amenable to talking to perhaps another overweight woman. Something to consider. So, another thing, when one puts out such a documentary, one has a mission statement. After watching Fat Topia twice, what exactly was filmmaker Connor Luke Simpson's mission statement? Besides being inspired by a Tess Holiday scandal from years ago. And I must add, a video which, honestly, I've seen better quality production values on YouTube videos. So what is Connor Luke Simpson's mission statement? How and who is Connor Luke Simpson trying to help exactly? What is he offering that is new, that we haven't heard already? Because, again, all I saw was an hour of one big bumper slogan style memes. Keep bumper sticker slogans for political campaigns and used car sales, not for something as complex and as scientific, sociological, and psychological as fat acceptance versus fat shaming. Lots of missing information here. Keeps harping on how obesity in the UK is such a huge burden on the NHS. I did ask an online friend of mine who does live in the UK if this was true according to her own observations. And she said that alcohol-related injuries and illnesses were one of the bigger culprits. Please note, I am not referring specifically to alcoholism, but to any kind of alcohol use and abuse. It could be, for example, the weekend binge drinker. Again, articles will be posted below in the description box pertaining to alcohol-related illness and injury and the impact it has on the NHS in the UK. It also appears that alcohol use and abuse in the UK is on the rise as well. Wow, this is on the rise. I don't hear nearly that much talk about that from any part of the world, really. Also, one gets the impression that obesity is the leading cause of death in the UK. Not so fast, dude. According to Public Health England, they are seeing increases in deaths related to Alzheimer's and dementia. According to a report published in 2018, Public Health England are forecasting that Alzheimer's and dementia will be the leading cause of death by 2020. That's next year, boys and girls. And as yours truly is afflicted with early onset FTD, this is a subject I research quite often when I feel on my game. And next, despite the science of weight management out in recent years, as well as medical conditions causing weight gain, weight loss prevention, it was barely glossed over to the point where the average viewer would completely miss it. Why? Because it wouldn't fit Mr. Connor Luke Simpson's narrative. Doesn't fit the narrative of many these days, it would seem. And there are many prescription medications and medical conditions, mainly hormonal, that do cause weight gain and prevent weight loss that needs to be talked about more. Oh, so much more. And here is a short list about to come on the screen of such medical conditions. Okay, at about 26 minutes and 35-second mark, the big, bold, alarming text. Fat kills! Know what else what kills? Cancers that are not related to obesity, smoking. How about eating disorders, namely anorexia nervosa and bulimia? And it should be added that there is a growing pro-ana movement, meaning pro-anorexia, pro-ana movement online, which very few people seem to be preoccupied with. But we should be. Bulimia and anorexia, after all, are the top killers of all the mental illnesses. Onward. Suicide. Drugs. In fact, opioid addiction has been and continues to grow exponentially in US and Canada. And people, how about vehicle accidents, mass shootings, which the US is becoming now the capital of the world in that department. I talked about dementia and Alzheimer's being a top killer in the UK, and those who don't know, dementia and Alzheimer's, it knows no size, it knows no gender, no sexual orientation, no ethnicity, and no socioeconomic class. Yet none of these causes I mentioned gets nearly the attention or stigma, other than perhaps the mentally ill, neurodivergent, that is. Even online, I have noticed that drug addicts, the anorexias, the bulimics, and their respective movements, alcoholics receive more compassion than the overweight and obese. I'm not saying they don't receive any hate or shame ever, they do, just not nearly as the magnitude as that an overweight woman does. These groups, of course, we all deserve compassion. But why don't we overweight people, particularly overweight women, receive the same amount of compassion and empathy? Also, I might add loneliness kills. Now, what does that have to do with the topic at hand? I will have articles discussing that below, also in the description box for your perusal. In fact, loneliness has now been deemed the new smoking. And given there is such hostility toward overweight women in particular, you better believe this population would be suffering from forced isolation, loneliness. You blame them. It's going to have the opposite effect. This has been proven time and time again. You bully them or ostracize them, they are not going to shape up because you demand them to. No, they are more likely going to retreat and more likely going to turn to what they know comforts them best. It's the same thing an addict would do, particularly if they're having a rough time or whatever. They're going to go and get high to forget about their own reality for a bit. It's the same difference. I believe this is what we call a vicious cycle. You shame a fat person, they retreat to eat more, to self-medicate, they gain weight, and face further hostility when they exit their homes. You get the idea. Oh, and here in Montreal, overweight women are viewed particularly with hostility. I can speak to that firsthand. So, for overweight women on YouTube slamming other overweight notable YouTubers, you wouldn't last 5 minutes in my city. Trust me. Not in the downtown core anyway, unless, of course, you're accompanied by somebody who is not overweight. Or you got the patent for some life-saving product, or wrote that great Canadian novel or something along those lines. You get the idea. Oh, and if one is to do an unbiased documentary on the subject of fat acceptance versus fat shaming, using the cancer kills argument, one might want to go deeper into that subject and try to break it down. The use of a clip from that infamous video from about 4 years ago, Nicole Arbour's Dear Fat People. Oh, God. This is the video that just never goes away. Yes, that same chick who is about as funny as a colonoscopy administered by a plumber. I know I keep using this phrase, but I like it. Okay? What exactly are her qualifications? She doesn't have any. There was not any point to it. All it did was cheapen your mission statement, if there ever was one, which I still haven't figured out yet, as I mentioned. Likewise, seeking health and scientific advice from TV personality Steve Miller of Fat Families fame? Really? What are his qualifications? Is he a dietitian? Is he a nurse? What is he? Where are his qualifications besides being sort of a shock jock of UK's reality TV? Next, while there is definitely a limit to the health at every size argument, the very idea that fat, under no exceptions, equals unhealthy and skinny equals healthy, again, no exceptions, full stop, is flawed. Just a few brief examples. According to a 2015 study, fat people who feel discriminated against have shorter life expectancies than fat people who don't. Now that's something to think about. Maybe kindness really is the better approach. These findings suggest that possibly the stigma associated with being overweight, the study concluded, is more harmful than actually being overweight. I will repeat this again. These findings suggest the possibility that the stigma associated with being overweight, the study concluded, is more harmful than actually being overweight. Again, so much for fat shaming helping people drop that weight. Study will be linked in the description box below. Also of note, a 2016 study that followed participants for an average of 19 years found that unfit skinny people were twice as likely to get diabetes as fit fat people. Habits, no matter your size, are what really matter. Dozens of indicators, anything from what is consumed, like more fruits and vegetables, for instance, to regular exercise, to reducing stress. They provide a better idea of someone's health than just simply looking at him or her from across a room or on a computer screen. I can tell you personally that type 2 diabetes runs in my family. For openers, my maternal grandmother was always rail thin. She never ever got fat. Yet she had both heart disease and type 2 diabetes. And yes, she died of liver and colon cancer. Both cancers that people like to say are directly linked to obesity. This, of course, was the case for her cousins and her aunts as well. I don't know, maybe faulty genes too? Onward, boys and girls. Normalizing obesity by having plus-size model on magazine covers. Stop the presses. Wow. Should I go dive head first into my fainting couch? How's about this? For years, and we still do, skinny, and I mean underweight, skeletal skinny, has been and still to this day is normalized. Many of whom, if not most, are either on drugs, have anorexia and or bulimia, but for many, many years have been glamorized. Young girls want to be them. We see this in comment sections in YouTube and in Instagram all the time. Evidence of that is little girls as young as 3 already starting to have body image issues. Girls as young as 8 or 9 are developing eating disorders like anorexia and bulimia. Know what else has been glamorized for ages? Drug and alcohol abuse, addiction. We put rock stars on the covers of magazines like Rolling Stone. But how often do we hear kids saying they want to be a rock star when they grow up? Or to be their favorite rock star? Or specifically even becoming the next Kurt Cobain? Or the next Keith Richards? Or the next John Bonham, for example? However, no one wants to be obese or overweight because of the backlash they face daily. One can argue that obesity is preventable, but using that same argument, so is anorexia, bulimia, so is drug addiction or alcoholism, as I talked about earlier in this video. So again, why does anyone who is obese or overweight merit being ostracized, bullied, discriminated against? Maybe, just maybe, if that young girl, that young overweight girl, or anyone with a body image issue who is relentlessly bullied or picked on at school, sees a plus-size model like Tess Holliday on the cover of a magazine, maybe, just maybe, she might feel a little bit better about herself, even if temporarily, less grotesque. Maybe if that overweight woman who is gawked at constantly at the gym by the spandex Sallies, or being stared at in disgust at the supermarket, or cannot have companionship, who sees this cover might again, even if only temporarily, maybe feel like maybe she too can have some sex appeal. Maybe she can feel attractive in her own way. More to the point, seeing plus-size models on magazine covers just might make an overweight girl or woman feel human for once after being constantly dehumanized by society. And Connor Simpson, Michael Moore, you ain't. Not even close. At the end of the movie, in small white font over a plain black background, it says, "It is still unclear how humanity will tackle obesity," and this is a direct quote. Well, boys and girls, allow me to take a crack at this, shall we? We start by stopping what is and what has not been working. Fat shaming, for one. Posting meaningless bumper sticker slogans and memes on social media. Because as mentioned, this only potentially sends that obese person back to what they know best. The vicious cycle I mentioned earlier in this video. Also, back to those medical conditions mentioned earlier in this video. We raise further awareness about those. Above all, we just learn to be kinder to one another and not base the value of a person by how they look or how skinny or overweight they may be. And we stop defining people based on their appearance and really get to know them. You might find they could be the best friends or the best allies you can have. The fact of the matter is that fat shaming is still pretty much one of the only socially acceptable and politically correct forms of prejudice and discrimination and hate. Discrimination, I'm talking about something like employment. And it seems society, generally speaking, needs something or someone they can actively hate on or bully or ostracize without impunity. Yes, That would be a great start on how humanity can tackle obesity. The only positive thing I can say about this movie, besides overweight women getting to express themselves on camera, was at the end, a male artist who happens to be pro-fat acceptance, and his art reflects that. He appears to see the beauty in all and got to talk about it and is what he does with his art. Though this honestly should have been in the middle of the film, not in a tiny video clip of him in the corner of the screen, surrounded by end credits and titles. As for you, Connor Simpson, Michael Moore, you ain't. That's going to end this video. Please give this video a thumbs up or down or on the way out the door. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and hit that little ringy-dingy icon below so you can be notified every time I upload. Please take care of yourselves and each other. Remember, if there is somebody in your midst who is at risk or vulnerable, please take the time to check in on them. It can make all the difference in the world and their already difficult lives. And I'll see you in the next one. Straight Talking Fedora Chick, over and out.